and watch this. I'll video record. I don't know if you'll use it, but I'll do it. I did have the video up from yesterday in case anybody missed. I think everybody was here because I heard Brody slid in like a minute after I started. I called him and verified it. So nobody should have to go back and watch the video, hopefully. But what I'm going to do is just go over the last stuff, and then I'll tell you from the bookwork what you should practice today to be ready for the quiz. I have to leave at 8:30, so here's what you can do tomorrow. I'm meeting at Calc at 7:15. I'm going to come at 7:15 till 8:15. You can come in early and start the test early, okay? I'm going to give you problems from the book where you have the answers. And if you struggle with anything from the book, I will be available all day, all night tonight to answer questions. Because I don't have time because I have to leave tomorrow. I'm leaving for a track meet. If you do want to come in early, I'll be working with my Calc kids from 7:15 to 8:15 because of their AP exam. You can come in early if you need to, but I will be available if you want to just... The best way to do it is if you'll send me a message on Remind, screenshotting your problem. But I'm only going to assign books from the problems from the book where you have the answers. So then you can go and check. Well, if you can't get the answer, then just let me know. And then I'll send you I did it to Molly. Not Molly. Molly's in my Calc class. I did one for Molly, and I did one for Elle, and I did one for... what class are we in? College Algebra. I did one for a couple of students yesterday. I did a couple for Calc, and I did one for Elle. Elle, did I do one for you in here?
Yes.
And did that help sending it over over the Remind?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'll do. So if you have a question on anything that's going to be on the test tomorrow from the book problems I'm going to assign, because that's the way the test is going to be. I'm just going to use the same problems. I'll just change the numbers. So if you practice them, there'll be no surprises tomorrow, just because of the situation we're in. All right, here we go. Yesterday I went through these absolute value inequalities. Absolute value inequalities, you have to be able to write piecewise. So please speak up, because I'm going to be asking you guys if I'm going too fast or if you need me to cover something. So just jump in if you need an explanation, because I'm going to try and finish this quick. A couple things from yesterday. Absolute value of x. I do have this as your first test question on the test tomorrow. You got to be able to write the absolute value of x. I'm just going to have absolute value of x equals in this little thing, and you have to write the piecewise function. And it's x, comma, x greater than or equal to 0, and negative x for x less than 0. And I'm also going to place a graph, and you have to draw the parent graph for absolute value of x, which is super easy. It's just a flying v. This has a slope of 1, and this has a slope of negative 1. Okay, and you can see it. So that'll be question 1 on your test tomorrow. There you go. The next thing is you need to know absolute value of x. If it's greater than c, or if its absolute value of x is greater than or equal to c or greater than c, this is a gray Tor situation. And then if you have the absolute value of x is less than or equal to c, or absolute value of x is less than c, this is a less than situation. And for both of these, we use the KISS method, keep it, switch, switch. And in special cases, I'm just trying to cover everything I did yesterday, would be if you have the two special cases, if you had the absolute value of x is greater than c, where c is a negative number. Does anybody remember what that solution would be? Anybody?
Is there no solution?
Close. You're on the right case. It's the other one.
All real numbers.
Double bar R. And the other situation is when it's the absolute value of x is less than c, when c is a negative, because absolute value can equal negative, that's your no solution situation. Okay, so those are your special cases. And I might have one of those, just one of them on the test tomorrow. Okay? All right, part D. With that, you have everything you need. So this is just like A and B, okay? Let's look at it. Is the absolute value isolated? Somebody speak up. Is it isolated? Yes or no? Just to make sure I'm getting through to you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, it is isolated. So then we have a gray Tor situation. So you set up your two cases. So you're going to have absolute value of x plus 1 is greater than or equal to x plus 4 over 2. Keep it. There's your keep it. Oh, by the way, I got to drop the absolute values. Okay? So it's just x plus 1. You don't need the absolute values when you set up your cases. Okay? It's a gray TOR, so you do OR. And then it's x plus 1 is, what do you do for the negative case? What do you do?
Flip the sign.
Yep, you flip the sign and make it negative. So you go there, and you're just going to put a negative out front. And you will have to distribute that negative. All right, now we solve. Okay? I'll solve the positive case first. And this is an OR, so we're going to do the union. So it's not an intersection situation. So I'm going to multiply.
Wait, since it's an OR, wouldn't you keep the sign the same and just make it a negative?
Nope, you do. No matter what, you always do switch, no matter if it's an OR or an AND. Because when you're multiplying by negative, so if you assume x is negative and you multiply by negative, that has to switch the inequality. So when I throw this negative out front, I have to switch that inequality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No matter what, on the negative case, you got to switch. All right, now I'm going to multiply by 2. I swear I'm working harder on my e-learning days than I am on my regular days. I've already made 3 videos today. All right, cross out the 2's. I'm going to have 2x plus 2 is greater than or equal to x plus 4. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, move the x over. Just solve like an 8th grader. Move the x over. It doesn't have x squareds in x, so you don't have to set it equal to 0 or anything. So it's x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 4. Subtract 2, we get x is greater than or equal to 2. Or, over here, I'd multiply both sides by 2. So I get 2x plus 2 is less than or equal to, I'm going to distribute this negative. Let's just go ahead and do that. Negative x minus 4. Now I'll get x on one side. So we got 3x plus 2 is less than or equal to negative 4. Subtract 2, we got 3x is less than or equal to negative 6. X is less than or equal to negative 2. So this is an OR situation. So I'm going to graph it real quick up here so you can see it. I'll graph it in blue. I think graphing helps you visualize that you're for sure have the answer the way you should. So it's x is less than or equal to negative 2. So that's a closed circle here to the left. X is greater than or equal to, that's a closed circle here. So we are correct to have an OR because there's a gap. ORs always have this gap in between, okay? And if you did the interval notation, it'd be negative infinity to negative 2, bracket, union, bracket 2 to infinity. But I don't require that. You can just leave it like this if you want with the OR. All right, any questions before I move on to the last part? And then we'll start reviewing.
Good.
Good? Okay. I'm skipping that one type of problem, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, last thing is quadratic inequalities. Quadratic inequality is an inequality where you have to do some factoring, and I've kind of taught you how to do it already when I did that parabola that ended up being a W yesterday. So what you're going to do is we're going to do what's called a sign analysis. Have I done sign analysis with you guys yet? I can't remember. I'm getting lost in all my classes. I don't think I have. Okay.
No.
Okay, so this is the last thing. There's going to be one question on this tomorrow. You will have more than one question on this in the next chapter. So I'm teaching you now so that in chapter 3 and 4 you know how to do it. Okay, quadratic inequality. This will come up in chapter 3, and 4. Okay? And by the way, we have chapter 3, chapter 4. Chapter 4 is really short, and then we go chapter 7, and then we go a short chapter 8, then we're done. So the chapters kind of 3 and 4 are the longest, 5, 6, and 7 are short.
6, 7.
I actually do those in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. I do them all together. Okay? So we basically got this test, and then we're going to have 3 more big tests, and then a final. So that's what it'll look like. And I'll clarify it again next week. I'll write it all out for you. All right, steps for solving quadratic inequality. You're going to rewrite the inequality, if necessary, as a quadratic function. So you're going to have like so let me explain what I mean by quadratic function. It's ax squared plus bx plus c. You're going to put this you're going to zero it out just like we would if we were solving it. Because remember, you can't solve like you did in 8th grade because it has an x squared and an x, so you have to set it equal to 0. And we either factored or quadratic formula. But we're doing an inequality now, so there's going to be a greater than or a less than. So it's going to change how we're going to do this. So we're going to zero it out. So put the first step as zero it out. Zero it out. What page is this on in your textbook?
215.
215. Okay, there we go. All right, find the zeros of f and place them on a number line. I'm not going to do a number line. I'm going to do what's called a sign analysis with a chart or a table or chart, if you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. And it's actually the easiest way to do it. I don't know why they don't teach it this way. Then we're going to choose what's called a test value in the intervals determined by step 2. We're going to determine the sign of f of x in each test value in step 3, and then write that sign in the corresponding interval. And then we're going to choose the intervals that correspond with the correct sign to solve the inequality. Now, I know that sounds like really fast, but it's not that bad. So here's what we're going to do. If it's greater than or equal to, we're going to look for it's positive. If it's less than or equal to, we're going to look for it's negative. Okay, it's actually really easy. I just got done doing it pre-calc, and it's not very hard to do. You did it. You would have done it in pre-calc. And we'll go through all these. We'll go through all these, but letter D is the one I'm not going to do. Yeah, go ahead. What now?
Can you go up just for a second?
Yeah. A talking point's like 10 or 15 parents from 9th grade. Nobody did their e-learning yesterday. My 9th grade. All my other kids did. All right, here we go. Are you ready? Can I move on, Keithan?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. We're going to go through 3 problems, and then that'll be it. Okay, this is the last thing we're doing. And then I'll go through the review with you, what you need to do. And then I'll be available the rest of the day into tonight. All right, part A. All right, we got 2x squared is less than or equal to 3 minus x. So pay attention. I'll write the steps out for you on this first one. Okay? Actually, is it okay if I move it here in the middle? All right, first step. I'm not going to go back to the previous page, but you can be following along. I think it was on page 215. Okay, page 215. But you just need to learn the steps. And I know it's one day to learn it, but that's why I'm going to cancel out some of this other stuff. All right, zero it out is step 1. So step 1, I'll write steps here. 0 set equal to 0. Zero it out. So can anybody tell me what you would do to zero it out? What would you do to zero it out? Anybody?
Add
Go ahead.
Can you move the 2x squared over, make it a negative, and then set it equal to 0, or no?
I would keep the 2x squared positive, just so you don't have to deal with that.
So move 3 minus x over?
Yeah. So I'd move the 3 and the x over. So I'd move the 3 over, minus 3, and then plus x. So minus 3 and then plus x. And you can do that in your head. You don't have to show any work for that. All right, so that's going to cancel. We're going to get 2x squared plus x minus 3. And it would have been fine to do it the other way. But I'm going to tell you, most students like the 0 on the right side because they have a hard time reading the inequality symbol if the 0 is not on the right side. They're like, oh, is it less than or equal to? I don't have. If you had it this way, it doesn't matter to me because I just read it backwards. So I go 2x squared plus x minus 3 is less than 0. But most people don't like reading backwards. So I would probably keep the 0 on the right side. All right, step 2. Find the zeros. Now that's going to require you to factor. I promise you the one on your test tomorrow when you do an inequality will not require quadratic formula. It will factor. Find the zeros. So what are you going to have to use here to get the zeros?
You have to do the half it square thing.
That's if you complete the square. We're actually just going to factor. You could do it that way, but I'm not going to because it's not fun.
Zoom meeting.
You could just do Knudsen method.
Bag.
I'll give Knudsen some credit today. You can slide and glide. All right, so we're actually going to find the zeros. We're finding the x-intercepts. We're just setting it equal to 0. So we're going to get x squared plus x minus 6. And I'm just going to put it equal to 0 for a minute. Okay, even though I know that ultimately the question we're trying to answer is where it's less than or equal to 0, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I just want to factor this real quick and figure out where it equals 0. Okay, so factors of -6 that add up to give me 1 would be, I think, x minus 3, x plus 2. Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay, sounds good to me. If you don't say anything, I assume we're good. All right, then since I slid the 2, I got to divide by the 2. So we're going to have, this is going to end up being 2x minus 3 and then x plus 1. So
Wait, Morris, wouldn't
yeah.
it be a positive 3 and a negative 2? Since you have a positive x?
Good catch. It would be let me just go back and erase it. So it would be an x plus 3 and an x minus 2. Good catch. Equals 0. Divide by the 2. 2x plus 3 and then x minus 1 equals 0. So we're going to get 2 zeros. This one is going to give us -3/2. And this is going to give you 1. Now, I'm going to explain this on the first one. And then after that, I think I won't have to explain it. I'm going to explain what we're about to do because you've never done it before. It's called a sign analysis. And step 3 is the last step. Okay, I condensed the steps in the textbook. So do sign analysis. I'm going to abbreviate it SA for sign analysis. And find solution. Now let me explain what the sign analysis is. I'm going to make sure I got that written down. Tell me when you're good. All right, is everybody good?
Yep.
All right, now here's what's happening. This parabola, I'm comparing to 0. That's why I need to zero it out. I need to figure out when this parabola is negative. Okay? So I'm going to figure out where this parabola is negative. I don't want to graph the parabola, even though I know the parabola is probably opening up, and it crosses at -3/2, and it crosses at 1. Nathan's in here making a lot of noise, and I'm going to get mad at him in a second. Okay? And the vertex is somewhere halfway in between. Okay? What you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out where this parabola is below the x-axis. But I don't want to have to graph it and do it. So here's how you do it, and it's super fast. You're going to figure out where it's below the x-axis by breaking up where it crosses 0. The reason why 0 is so important is because that's where it changes from positive to negative and negative to positive. Does everybody see why I got the zeros? Okay, because that's where it's going to change it from negative to positive. So what you're going to do is you're going to divide up the x-axis. Okay, you're going to divide up the x-axis into intervals. The intervals would be this, and this is where you do your sign analysis, and it's actually super simple. Okay, you're going to go from -∞ to -3/2. This is the first place the parabola would cross the x-axis. So that's the first potential place it could switch from positive to negative. And then we're going to go from -3/2 to 3/2. And then we're going to go from not from -3/2 to 3/2, -3/2 to 1. My fault. So I'm using the zeros to create intervals. And all I'm doing is dividing the x-axis up from -∞ to infinity. Now, you've got 2 ways you can do this. You can either cheat by thinking about the graph, like I just did here, and know that it's going to be above, below, above. And the answer we're looking for is where it's negative, so it's clearly going to be here. Or you do what's called a test value, and a lot of people do test values because they're not sure, they don't know for sure what the graph looks like. So you do you test 0. You test 0. And what you do is you just plug it, You plug 0 into your equation to see if it's going to give you a positive or a negative. So pay attention on this. The first one will be a little weird, and then after we do the first one, you'll be like, okay, I got it. If I plug 0 in, what's 0 going to make this, positive or negative? Somebody tell me, positive or negative? Positive.
Oh, wait.
Yep, positive is correct. Okay, 2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 3 is a positive. But what would 0 make this?
Negative.
What's a positive times a negative?
Negative.
So we know that interval is negative. I'm going to use blue there so you can see it. So we know this is negative. Now here's the deal. If there's no even multiplicity, and we haven't talked a lot about multiplicity, so there's not going to be, so you're not going to have to worry about this till chapter 3. So for right now, the signs are going to alternate. And the reason they alternate is if you look at the graph, it was above, below, above. Now, some people like to just think of the graph. They like to say, oh, I know the parabola is going to cross here and here. And since it's opening up, it has to go above, below, above, below, above. Your answer to that question is, where is it negative? Because I wanted to know where it was less than or equal to 0. So your final answer, do sign analysis and find solution. Your final answer is it's where it's negative, and it's also where it equals 0, so you do include the endpoint. So the answer is from negative 3/2 to 1, or you can put negative 3/2 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 1. I don't care. This is your answer. That's how you do it.
Or is it always just gonna be what equals like, or what x, like what equals 0?
Yep,
Like,
find the zeros, set up your sign analysis, and do it. Every time. And even when we get into chapter 3 and chapter 4, it's going to be that way. The problem is in chapter 3 and chapter 4, the sign analysis sometimes going to switch on you.
Okay, so if it was positive, it would be like our answer would be negative infinity to negative 3/2.
Yeah,
and
if
then-
this middle one would have been positive, these two would have been negative, then you would have had these two be the answers.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I'm going to do another one, so I'm done. This is the last teaching. I'm just going to do part B and part C, and we'll be good. Here we go, part B. All right, part B, let's go. So you need to zero it out first. So what should I move, everybody?
The 1.
Yep, so we'll have x squared minus 2x minus 1 is greater than 0. So step 1 is done. Step 2, factor it. And it will factor tomorrow, so don't worry, it's going to factor. Or I hope it factors. Oh, this one does not factor. I'm not going to give you one that's not going to factor. I'm not going to do flipping quadratic formula. Okay, so I'm going to do quadratic formula right now, but I will not do quadratic formula tomorrow on the test. Is that fair?
Yep.
For this, I'm going to do a quadratic formula problem, but I'm not going to do it on this because that's crazy. So since this does not factor, because I can't find the factors of -1 that add up to give you -2, you're doing quadratic formula. And I do have some quadratic formula problems on the test, but not with this. I'm not going to make it that hard. All right, since we got it set equal to 0, can we use quadratic formula correctly? Yep, that's the big rule. All right, so negative b would be 2 plus or minus, stop me if you do not understand what I'm doing. So opposite of b is 2 plus or minus 2 squared would be 4 minus 4 times 1 times a -1 over 2 times 1. So we're going to get 2 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 4 is 20 over 2, which will give you 2 plus or minus, what's up? Oh, wait, it's not a 20, is it? Is it 8? 4 plus 4?
Yeah, I got on the calculator, it said 8.
Okay, good. All right, so we got 2 plus or minus 2 root 2 over 2. How did I get 2 root 2? I don't know. No 8th grade math. I'm sorry, it's 9th grade math. It's not 8th grade math. I did 8 as 2 2's. Now, if you leave it as a square root of 8, I really don't care tomorrow. But it does go down to, for this kind of a problem. Eventually, I'm going to make you simplify the roots. Okay? But if you don't tomorrow, since we're doing this so short, if you forget to simplify the roots, if you leave it like this, I'm probably going to be okay tomorrow. Next chapter, I will not be okay with that. You do need to know how to simplify square roots. That's a prereq for this course. Now, I'm going to do decimals because I don't know where these are at. So when I do this is your zeros. This is where the graph crosses the x-axis. This is where x squared minus 2x minus 1 cross the x-axis right here. So somebody get a calculator out and tell me so I can do my sign analysis. What is 2 plus root 2 and what is 2 minus root 2? I know the negative one's going to come first. So 2 minus root 2. What's that as a decimal?
0.5857.
0.586. We'll just go 0.586. Is that okay? Or 0.587. Is it 0.587 or 0.586? I don't care. What do we got to round to? 0.58 what?
0.586.
6, okay. And then we're going to go from 0.586 up to 2 plus root 2. What's 2 plus root 2?
3.414.
Okay. And then we'll have 3.414 to infinity. Again, tomorrow mine will factor the problem you're going to have to do for this. So don't stress out. It will factor. All right. Now you can cheat and say this is a parabola that opens up. And since it's a parabola that opens up and it's going to cross at 0.56 something and 3.4 something, you know it's going to be positive, negative, positive. Or you can do your test value. Test 0. Now some people are like, what if I can't test 0? Well, then test 1. Okay. All right. 0 is definitely between these two, correct? All right. So I can test 0. Well, since it's not factored, I have to test it here. 0 makes that zero's out, that zero's out, you get a negative. So it does agree with the fact that it was supposed to be negative in the middle. So it is a plus minus plus again. This time I'm looking for where it's greater than 0, for where it's positive. So this time, Zamira, I'm going to look for where it's positive, which is here and here. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So then, and now it's not greater than or equal to, so I just do the parentheses. So negative infinity to 0.586 with the parentheses, union 3.414 to infinity. There's your answer. Any questions? Let's do one more to make sure we got it, and then I'm going to tell you what the bookwork is, which you have almost all the bookwork. And then I'll do one of those profit problems if you want before. I want to be done at 10:30 though. So was it okay to erase that, or did I erase too fast, or did I need to get it back?
Please go back.
Do you need me to see it? Can you see it now?
I love you too. Because I'm doing class right now.
Okay, we good?
Yes.
All right, letter C. Okay, here we go, letter C. All right, here we go. C. All right, so we set it equal to what first, everybody?
0.
0. So we're going to have x squared minus 2x plus 1 is less than or equal to 0. I move the 2x over. Now this one will factor, so this will be one like on your test tomorrow. You can find the factors of 1 that add up to give you negative 2. So it'll go x minus 1 times x minus 1 is less than or equal to 0. Okay, this one's a little weird. This one actually, we'll get to in a second. So you're going to get a 0 of 1. And I want to know where it's less than or equal to 0. This one's actually weird. I shouldn't have told you it's always going to alternate because this one doesn't. All right, my sign analysis. Here we go. What's the sign analysis going to be? It goes from what? Negative infinity to what?
1.
1. And then 1 to what?
Infinity.
Infinity. Okay? All right. This one right here is interesting because you haven't done this since pre-calc, so I'm not going to do something like this on the quiz tomorrow. I'll make sure they alternate. But this is what you call multiplicity 2. We'll get to this in chapter 3. When it's multiplicity 2, the signs actually won't alternate. So they're both either going to be minus, minus, or plus, plus. And you might remember that from pre-calc. It's when the same answer shows up twice. And so what you have is a parabola that crosses at 1, and it opens up, but it doesn't go below anymore. So it's positive, positive. And I think most of you can see that. But I will do one that alternates tomorrow, to be fair. If you do a test value, if you test 0 here, you get a negative here. 0 minus 1 is a negative. You get a negative here. A negative times a negative is a positive. And then if you were to test 2 here, because 2 would be between 1 and infinity. Oops, sorry. What the heck just happened? Dang it. It's annoying. Had to happen once. If you test 2, 2 would make this positive, and 2 would make this positive as well, and a positive times a positive is also a positive. Now, here's the question. Since they're both positive, the question is, when is it less than or equal to 0? So what do you put if it's never negative? What if you put if it's never negative?
No solution. I don't know.
There is nowhere it's negative. You're correct. Now, my question is, it would be no solution if it was less than 0, but it's less than or equal to 0. Is there places where it equals 0? Just one.
Is it just 0?
It would just be 1. Because 1's where it equals 0. So x equals 1 is the answer. That's it. Because there's nowhere it's negative. Okay, you're looking for it's less than or equal to 0. There's nowhere it's negative. And this is the place where it equaled 0 at 1. Okay, remember we set these equal to 0. And 1 is where it equaled 0. So the only answer is 1. Okay? All right. That is all she wrote. I'm going to give you the rest of the book work. And then what I can do right now is if you want me to work one or more of those, or if you want me to do one of the profit function problems from the book, I can right now. I'm not going to do a graph one. I was going to do a graph one, but I got to throw something out. And that's just going to have to get thrown out. I do know that these graphs are in the MyOpenMath. If you got a question on those, I can answer that this weekend. You just shade. You do shading. Where you do these graphs, where you like graph the function, and like you have like a bird here, like y is greater than the bird. You have to do like a bird, a dash bird, and then you have to figure out, okay, if we're greater than, you have to shade above. So that's in the MyOpenMath. I won't put that on the test though. Okay. Is there an example from the textbook that you want me to do? Do you want me to do one of those profit problems or not?
Yeah, can you do one of them?
Yeah, which one? Can you pick one? And I'm actually gonna, can you see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to do something here. Tell me if this, okay, and then I'm gonna go, if you wanna go to your textbook real quick for just a minute, I'm gonna tell you. Can you still see my whole screen, or does it put it off the screen?
No, you can still.
Now we can see it.
Huh?
You can still see the whole.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, sweet, I can get that out of the way then. So you can still see the whole thing right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. That is fantastic. All right, let's go to the textbook then. Chapter 2. Let's go to the page where the profit problems were at. Is that page 200?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody go to page 200, and then I'll tell you the textbook problems from the section we just finished to add to your textbook problems, and that's it. I'm not going to add a ton more. Okay. All right, let's see here. Got to get to the page 200. Keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. All right, what number? Do you have a preference?
Do 11.
Yeah, I can do 11. Okay, number 11, it says the cost in dollars to produce X bottles of 100% all natural, certified free trade, organic Sasquatch tonic is C of X. Now, please let me know. So this is number 11 on page 200. Okay, C of X is equal to 10X plus 100. Can you still see my screen all the way?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. And then the price demand function in dollars per bottle is little p. We got little p is equal to 35 minus X from 0 to 35. Okay. So here's what we got. All right. It says answer the following questions. Find the profit function. All right. I'm obviously going to pick 10 through 14. I'm probably not picking number 11 tomorrow. So after I do number 11, make sure you've done the other ones because I'm probably going to pick one of those word for word. This is the one problem I probably won't even change. Okay, I won't even change the numbers on it. All right, so C of X, we have this. P of X, we've got this. We want to find the profit function. So the first bullet point, profit, is going to be, and by the way, I told you could start the test early, right? At 8:30?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now I know, Keith, is any girls in our class in track? Is there any girl track runners? Nobody's got to miss the test. No. Okay. Profit is revenue minus cost. What do we not have right now that we need?
Revenue.
We don't have revenue. How do you find revenue?
Isn't it X times little p?
X times little p. That's correct. So revenue is X times little p. So we're going to take X times little p is 35 minus X, which will give you revenue is 35X minus X squared. Let me know if I screw up because sometimes I tend to screw these up. So there's revenue. So now I can find my first bullet point, which is profit. So you might have to find revenue first, and that's not even going to be a point. You just have to do it to be able to do this next part. So then I've got 35X minus X squared minus the cost function, which is 10X plus 100. Now I distribute the negative, so I'm going to get 35X minus X squared minus 10X minus 100. So this will give me negative X squared minus or plus 25X minus 100. Please let me know if I did it wrong, but I think I did it correct. Is it okay? Mm-hmm. There's profit. All right, next bullet point. Says find the number of items which need to be sold in order to maximize profit. All right, everybody listen to me carefully. If you want to find the number of items in which you want to maximize profit, you're always looking for the vertex of the parabola. See, this parabola is opening down. You want to figure out the number of items that's going to maximize the profit. You want to find the vertex. If I want you to maximize, it's always the vertex. Write that down. If you want to maximize, it's always the vertex. So the first bullet point just wants to know the number of items. So that's the X value of the vertex. So you're going to have an X and a Y. The third bullet point is what is the max profit? That'll be the Y value. X is where it is, Y is what it is. So you can do this two ways to find the vertex. You can either complete the square or you can do the opposite of B over 2A. I don't really feel like completing the square unless I have to. You do have one problem where you're required to complete the square tomorrow. And I'm going to make it easy. It's not going to have fractions or anything. So what do you guys prefer? Do you want me to complete the square or do you want me to do opposite of B over 2A or do you want me to show both so you know how to do both?
The opposite of B over 2A.
I like that the best. Does anybody need to see completing the square?
No.
Everybody knows how to complete the square for their one problem tomorrow? Okay, as long as you're good. Okay, so the opposite of B would be negative 25 over 2 times negative 1, which would be negative 25 over negative 2, which is going to be 12.5. Is everybody okay with that? So this is the value that maximizes profit. You would either sell 12 or 13 of them. And what you would do to be for sure is you would plug in 12 and 13 because you're not going to make half a bottle. You'd plug in 12 and 13 into this equation and figure out which one gives you the biggest, and that's the one that's going to maximize profit. Okay, and I don't know if you can, somebody tell me what it would be if you plug in 12 or if you plugged in 13. Let's see, if you plugged in 12, it'd be negative 12 squared. You got to do the negative on the outside. Plus 25 times 12 minus 100. And then if you plugged in 13, it'd be the opposite of 13 squared plus 25 times 13 minus 100. What do you get if you plug in 12?
56.
56. What do you get if you plug in 13? It's not going to be that much different, but we got to pick the...
I got the same.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the situation where it wouldn't matter. Sell 12 or 13. And that's because you're dead smack in the middle. So it should be. It's a parabola. Yeah, duh, that makes sense. Because if you're 12.5, 13 is halfway from 12. 12 is halfway from 12. A parabola is symmetric. So yeah, they should both be 56. Duh. So it wouldn't matter. Sell 12 or 13. You're going to maximize profit. And then your answer. So that answer for that bullet point is sell 12 or 13. So there's that bullet point. And then the next bullet point, what is the max profit? Well, that would be $56. Okay. Questions? Is everybody okay? And then finally, the break-even point is when this equals 0. So the last bullet point is when P of X equals 0. And that's what you have to do for the test tomorrow. So we got negative X squared plus 25X. Now, on this one, I'm not going to tell you. It's either going to factor or you're going to have to use quadratic formula. You don't have a choice on this one. All right, I'm going to try factoring, praying it factors. So I'm going to take a negative out. So it'll be x squared minus 25x plus 100 equals 0. Then that's going to leave me factors of 100 that add up to give you 25. Anybody can think of them? Both
Negative 20 and negative 5.
There you go. X minus 20, X minus 5. Sweet. It doesn't matter about the negative because if you set negative 1 equal to 0, that's not going to give you anything. X minus 20 equals 0 will give me 20. And X equals 5 for the other one. X minus 5 equals 0 would give me 5. So there are your break-even points. So you know this parabola. Basically, remember I told you this yesterday, it crosses at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it crosses at 20, so way up here at 20. And then right dead smack in the middle of that parabola is always the vertex. So here would be 12.5. So there's 5, there's 20, smack in the middle is the vertex. And that's your break-even point because so if you sell less than 5 bottles, you're going to be in the red. If you sell more than 20 bottles, you're going to be in the red. You want to sell between 5 and 20 bottles. Now, I don't have, this question wasn't on here, but I am going to have this question tomorrow. There's going to be one more bullet point. Does anybody know what it's going to be? It's going to be take the one that produced either the 12 or the 13 and figure out what the price would be. So you're going to use that. So once you determine that your 12 or 13 is going to give you your max, figure out what your price should be. So use your little p, which is 35 minus x. It'll be a point. And would you like me to put that right after the max and min part? Would you like me to put that bullet point right after that? Would that make it easier?
Yeah, that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay, so I'll put the 12 in, so it'd be 35 minus 12, which would be $23. Or if you did the 13, I would accept 2 answers here because both work. You could sell it for $22. And somebody's like, well, how would that happen? Well, if you sold them for $22 and you sold 13, you could maximize profit. Or if you sold them for $23 and sold 12 of them, you could maximize profit. So I would accept either answer there. So there's 2 ways you could get to max profit. Because you're going to be on either side of the vertex because you can't make 12 and a half bottles. So there's 2 places where the parabola is equal. All right, so here's what I want you to do. Okay, and I'll be available the rest of the day. Sounds like you guys are good on completing the square. Nobody asked, but if you want me to... The only thing I'll mention on completing the square, I do want to mention something real quick, and then I'm going to call it good. If you did complete the square, let me just do it real quick, because that way who had the question yesterday? Elle had the question yesterday, and this was a mistake she was making. It was a simple mistake, and she fixed it right away. If you decide you want to complete the square, and there is a completing the square problem on the test tomorrow, here's the trick. If there's a number in front of the x squared, you have to factor it out. And here's what you want to do. When you factor it out, and I'll show you real quick, just so you have this. You only factor it out of the first two. You move the 100 off to the side. And that was the mistake that I was finding some people were making yesterday. Elle, does that make sense now?
Yeah.
Okay. So then you do your half it, square it. So you do half of 25, negative 25. It's not going to matter because you're going to square it. So you're going to get negative 25 halves, which is the negative 12.5. Then you square it, which is going to give you 625 over 4. So I add 625 over 4 here. Now, you changed it. You have to distribute that negative. So this is actually negative 625 over 4. So you have to add 625 over 4 at the back end. Okay, because it looks like you're adding it, but this negative gets distributed. So you got this negative out front. You're going to have x minus the square root of this is 25 halves. And then let's see what this is. This will be over 1, so it'd be 400 over 4. So that'd be 225 over 4. Is that correct? Is that right? Somebody tell me if that's right. 400 plus negative 400 plus 625. That's 225 over 4. Yep. And so yep, that's right. Vertex then would be the 12.5, or the 25 would be the 25 halves, or the 12.5 comma whatever 225 over 4 is, which that's your true max. That's the true max. We're not going to use that, though, for the maximum price, because we picked 12 or 13 to figure out the $56 because we can't do 12 and a half bottles. But that is how you do the vertex. You got the same thing as the opposite of B over 2A. Does that help everybody? So when you're completing the square and you got to factor something out, push that constant out. And then remember to multiply by that number that you factored out so you know what to do the opposite of at the end. And I promise you on my completing the square one, no fractions. It'll work out nice. All right, here is your last part of the homework. I assigned some bookwork yesterday, okay, from 2.4. So 2.4, the only additional bookwork I'm going to assign so you're just not overwhelmed, since this is such a weird situation we're in, okay? And as I'm just going to do some of those inequalities. So you had 1 through 6. Make sure you can do 1 through 6. And then let's do... So I'm on page 220, 1 through 6. Okay. And let's do 17 through 25 odd. So 17, 19, 21, 23, and 25. So if you can do those are the sign analysis problems where you got to do a sign analysis. Is that okay?
Say that one more time, Morris.
Page 220, we had 1 through 6 from yesterday.
Yep.
I'll even write it down. So page 220, 1 through 6, all. And then we had, what was it? 17 through 25 odd. So it's only those additional problems. And then all the other homework problem I've signed this chapter. And after I get done with my calc class, I will put a summary of all that homework on Google Classroom to make sure you are in the right spot. Or that you've done them all. And I'm only going to do test questions tomorrow that are like the book work. Any questions?